Level 1 Research Training and Support. And we're going to start presenting now. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm reminding everyone that I'm recording, so just be aware. And can you see a presentation called Finding and Being a Good Mentor? Haley, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is a fun talk that I give to health sciences students really across the spectrum. Generally graduate students, but graduate students in nursing, medicine, OT, research-focused students that are getting PhDs, just because it's incredibly hard to find a good mentor. And as a graduate student or graduate level student, you are also being asked to become a mentor. And so you're kind of dealing with this weird kind of like sandwich space where you have these pressures on both sides. And so I like to talk about it with underrepresented minority faculty, and that can be a very broad definition. So maybe you're from an ethnic or racial minority or, you know, environment or situation that we don't normally have in healthcare. But in this case, if you're actually somebody who is not in a family that's from a healthcare background, there's also going to be information and challenges that you just may not be familiar with, because historically, a lot of people in a field will encourage their children to go into that field. So if you're the first doctor in your family, be that physician or nurse or OT, you may not know this information. So it's fairly general, but I found it to be helpful. And like I said, I've had some good experiences showing it across a big swath of students. So why mentorship? Like, why would you even do this? And the idea is that you really benefit from learning from another person's experiences in your field. You may think you know what you want to do and who you want to be, and you kind of have this vision of yourself 5 or 10 years from now, but you really can't know what you don't know. So if you find somebody who is farther along than you really get exposed to different perspectives and possibilities in your field that you literally had no way of knowing they exist, right? And so that's really important because for a lot of these different situations, you have to pivot at a certain time. And if you miss that pivot point, you may lose the opportunity, for example, to be a triage nurse that works in helicopters, right? I actually have a friend who does that. And how would you even know that that's a job if it happens to be something you're interested in? You also get exposure to their networks. So your mentors have been around longer than you. And so they have their own experience of building their kind of world, clinically, socially, in an academic space. And once you have someone who can kind of vouch for you, then you have all of that access, and it really helps you get farther faster. You can also develop a more critical approach to your career, because let's be real here, we are so bogged down in the day by day, just getting all of the many things done that we need to get done. And this is especially true during a pandemic where we are all triaging constantly. And so in this situation, it allows you to interact with somebody who may ask you some questions that you're not necessarily asking yourself, and really engage you in this sort of critical view. And then, of course, mentors hold you up or uphold you when you have doubts. And I can't oversell this enough. I actually had a student who worked with me as a research assistant for many years and was accepted into a PA program, and she's in her 2nd week. And she called me and, was distraught. This happened this last week. And I was like, we talked about this, right? We talked about imposter syndrome, and we talked about these other things, and it's okay, but let's go through it again now that it's real. All of these things that you've heard about, you're really experiencing them, and let's do some active problem solving so that it feels better and it feels like we can move forward. So there's traditional mentorship, especially in the United States. We had this pattern of, I don't want to say nepotism, but kind of, right? But there's this idea that you have this formal mentor who you generally were contacted, you were able to contact through your own family or social networks, and they were kind of farther along in their career, and you want to emulate them, and you're going to follow their track, and they're going to feed you this knowledge, like water you, and you're going to grow into kind of a model of who they are right now. And this model of mentorship just doesn't apply anymore. Because in reality, mentees, which is your position, we're a little bit more empowered than older generations, right? We tend to know who we are, know what we want a little bit more, are willing to ask for the respect that we, believe in, that we deserve, and that I'm sure we deserve. But we also are surrounded by other individuals who are similarly empowered. And so I love that picture on the right. I believe this was a law school class coming out of Harvard. But the idea that we grew up in these highly competitive spaces, and we really are expecting more return for our investment with a mentor than just, water me with your wisdom and I will grow up to be an exact replica of you. It's generally not what people are going for. And you see, I actually first gave this presentation in 2018. I guess I should update that. And then the other idea here is that a lot of mentors from kind of that older generation come from this traditional introduction, and now we're in the space of a non-traditional introduction. So the traditional introduction is up there in the cartoon on the left, which is like, hey, I looked over your resume, but I need to see your previous experiences and your references and your college GPA and all of this other stuff. And the kid's like, and then he's like, I'm just kidding. Who do you know who works here? Oh, it's my brother's friend. Yeah, okay, well, welcome aboard, right? In this scenario, which actually, if you've worked in some kind of hospital settings, hospital systems, technology companies, there's some residual behaviors that way, but really it's not that way anymore. It's often that you have really struggled to get to the position you're in, and the person that's hiring you, or a mentor, who is your potential mentor, may actually not be that much older or accomplished than you. Because it's an unusual space that's really dynamic and moves quickly. And who you are, who you know, just doesn't really apply anymore, right? And so in this kind of world, you have to think about when you come up to somebody who owes you nothing, which is this non-traditional model, you're making a humble request, right? As a mentee, you're asking somebody for their time. So there's some things that you need to do in order to make that a reality. So I always tell people, before you approach a potential mentor, you want to look at this little green box here. You want to create a dream roster. Who do you need to fill out your mentorship team? And does this person actually fit in that space? Because sometimes you meet somebody who's really cool or really important and you want to reach out to them or wait after the talk and talk to them, but they're actually not what you need. And so you don't want to tap people that wouldn't potentially be part of this dream roster. Now, it's unusual to have that personal connection, but if you do, it's always best to get an introduction. Do you know anybody in their circle that can potentially do a soft kind of lead-in for you with like a friendly email, something like that? If that's not possible, you want to show that you're interested in this individual. I know it's COVID right now, so you can't really attend their presentations or take their classes, but there are ways around that to just demonstrate some interest in this person beyond just kind of like, this is their title and someday I want my title to be that. You can read their book or any of their latest papers. I've had a lot of success talking to people and really leading with, hi, I'm Adrienne, I'm blah, 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 with my short little 3-minute speech that we're going to talk about. But I just saw the manuscript that you published in Health Promotion Practice, and it was so fascinating. I really wanted to talk to you about it. That immediately lets people know that, again, you're not after them for their title, but you're really interested in who they are. So when you approach in person, you want to have a 3-minute elevator speech that is ready to go, that tells them who you are, a little bit about your backgrounds and interests, and what you want from them. And it's helpful to practice this elevator speech. It's called an elevator because the idea is like you get into an elevator with like your dream mentor. You only have 3 minutes to get to your floor. What do you say in that 3 minutes to really capture their attention? And this is something you should have pretty dialed in and something that you should be able to rattle off at any time. Kind of the COVID version of that is you may need to write an email. But people don't have time to read this big, huge, lengthy email. So you're doing the elevator speech version of an email. Again, who are you? What's your background and why are you interested in this? And then what specific connection do you want to make to this person? After you've done that basic intro with them, you should be prepared to do a 5-minute elevator speech. Expand out a little bit, but give them some space to ask you questions. And you really should be prepared for a formal introduction, which is like, and this happens very frequently to me. I will meet someone, we will jive and get along really well, and they will say, great, send me your CV. Now, people don't want to wait a week and a half for you to update your CV and resume to send it to them. You basically have to be ready to go tomorrow. So we have another video that we did that was about CVs and resumes. I would check that out. But this is just another step in that. How do you handle this intro process, right? Because at the end of the day, you want them to know who you are and you want them to understand your goal. Because as a mentor, we may not be doing that upper left cartoon, but we are certainly doing the bottom left cartoon, which is I only have so much time in the day. So I am ranking the people that are trying to contact me and ask me to donate my time. And you really want to make sure that you get a good opportunity if in fact it's the right opportunity for you. So the other thing that I see here that tends to be a little bit of a disconnect between mentors and mentees, and again, as we go through this presentation, think about yourself as the mentor and the mentee, right? And think about, the mentor for students that are underneath you or even faculty that are underneath you, and the mentee of somebody who is like trying to lead you to the next step. Across the board, we need to be sensitive about people's availability. This is especially true right now. But I will tell you, most mentors are thinking, my time is valuable, right? It never ends. I go to work, I'm thinking about, what I got to do. I go home and I go to sleep and I think about work, and it's just this like constant cycle. And that's true. Most of the clinicians and academics that I know mentally put in like a 14, 15-hour day, right? So you really can't waste my time. But the kind of modern take on this, because we used to expect mentees to just jump whenever we wanted them, is that for mentees, their time is valuable too. There's a lot of common reasons why people drop out of college. And I think it's important to notice that financial stress, academic disqualification, right, lack of family support, homesickness, this data that I have on the lower right, which is in the citations, it makes you really see that people are dealing with so much more than just the assignments, right? So much more than just what's on their plate. And so on both sides, you really want to be sure to make a plan and stick to it. I will tell my mentees, you get one chance to be late. I will wait 15 minutes and then that's it. And then you got to go through a pretty lengthy process to schedule with me again, because my time is valuable and I want to feel respected. So I also use alternative forms of contact. Let's do a Zoom instead of meeting in person. Let's like Skype or let's text. Let me know if you're running late. That's fine. But just being a no-show, you get one of those and then that's it. Also, when we're meeting, have a plan. Show up as a mentor and a mentee with a checklist of things that you would like to accomplish. Today, I want to talk to them about, the boards that I know are kind of looming, or early in the call, we mentioned needing to get IRB approval. I need to check in and see, did she move forward with that IRB application? And if she didn't, what can I do to support? And as a mentee, I have questions about how do I change my license from Texas to California? I know you had done that. Do you mind working through that with me? Whatever your particular question is, go there with more in mind than I'm here to just have a friendship with this person. Because, you really want the time you spend together to be worthy of each other's time, because we're all sacrificing for these relationships, time with our family, just important time to mitigate burnout and like do activities that we enjoy. So you really want to show that you respect it. And so this is another thing that is a big sticking point for people, and that's in terms of giving and taking feedback. If you attend our writers workshop, what you may have noticed is that we read off some rules at the beginning. And one of the questions that we ask is, how do you want to receive feedback and what sort of feedback do you like? Because some feedback can be pretty rough and some people love that. And some feedback can be a little bit too soft and people can feel like, wow, that wasn't very helpful, right? So there is that, but there is also this historical legacy of mentors kind of being up here, coming from dominant culture spaces, or feeling like they know more than you if you're the mentee. And as a mentee, sometimes you've lived an entire lifetime before you came to this program, right? And you really want to make sure people know that. And so you may have to deal with things that are like a mentor giving you some feedback. So if you look at the left cartoon, I've been reading about time travel. Cool, I did my thesis on time travel. Nice. You know about closed time-like curves? Yes, thesis. Apparently wormholes can use exotic matter to, yeah, I know, like I said, right? There is this tendency sometimes for people to assume that because you're asking them for help that you don't necessarily know, or you're not at the same place as them, when in fact, sometimes you actually know more. So there's the middle one. After reading a couple of Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks books, I now take every opportunity to educate women of color on their own oppression, right? I'm a woman of color. A lot of us have been in that position. And you have to kind of balance with how much am I going to challenge this mentor to let them know that this is inappropriate, and how much am I going to kind of let it go because it benefits this larger piece. As a mentor, it's on you to constantly recognize that there are spaces where you're going to misbehave a little bit. And you really have to be conscious and aware of how you're going to come off to somebody that's looking to you for guidance and kind of ego integrity building. But, you know, really is respecting you in a way that could potentially change the way they express themselves in the future. Similarly, mentees, you know, I learned from feedback, but sometimes mentees, you know, have their own background and history that doesn't always kind of go along with what we expect in terms of a business environment, right? That's not necessarily what we want to promote. I think it's important for us to maintain who we are without having to change so much of ourselves as a mentee. But you're going to have to balance out, what does this look like? In environments that are really homogenous, like you see in that little middle picture where everybody's in a blue suit, that's tough, right? Because you may end up in a spot where you can get labeled as being aggressive or impulsive or, you know, really talkative, and maybe that's not great for you. All I'm saying is that mentors and mentees both have it rough right now, while as a society, we're trying to figure out how to respect people's differences and work within that space with the knowledge that people bring their histories with them. So on both sides, just make sure that you consider that people have personal histories or triggers, right? So just be open, be kind, be willing to hear that you goofed up in one of those conversations, and be willing to say, I felt like you goofed up in that conversation, and give people the benefit of the doubt that they're willing to learn. You got to get what you need on both sides of this divide between mentors and mentees, because we simply don't have enough time as clinicians and researchers and people who really care about healthcare. We don't have time to invest emotionally and mentally into spaces that aren't going to be productive. But while you're doing that, there are things that you can do to protect yourself while you're getting what you need, like don't take it personally. The biggest thing here is if your mentor is not available for you for a month, or every conversation is kind of a little bit short, or different things are happening, it's entirely possible it has nothing to do with you. This is such a weird time for all of us. Just remember, people may have things going on. And if this seems like it's happening a lot, you may want to diversify your mentor search. Think about individuals that you wouldn't initially think about as like your top mentor priority, but it's possible, and this happens a lot in academia, the really famous people who are well known and highly published and highly funded, they don't have time for you. So while they may be like of the height, you know, in terms of respect, you really may want to look at some mid-career people or even early career people that are doing similar things that you're doing, who will have time for you and will be able to talk through some of these issues that, you know, or that are concerning you or that you're having. So really consider the benefits of peer-peer mentorship. We can actually get pretty far supporting each other and leveraging that support, but also all of our shared access to people through our social and academic networks and clinical networks. It's actually pretty effective, especially when you can't get a call back from, you know, this person up here who's just kind of too busy. Definitely join professional organizations and attend annual conferences. This is the best place to make contacts, even if we're virtual. there are often these shared spaces, these rooms that you can kind of decompress or talk about the different, presentations that you just saw. Try to connect with people and just form this big web of individuals that are interested in the same things you are, or some kind of slightly different take on it, so that you really have a community that you're kind of all elevating each other together, and you're aware of what everyone is doing, and you know that there's opportunities that might help you kind of move along, especially from the professional organizations. Now, you can seek out formal mentorship and fellowship programs and apply. I highly encourage this at any stage of your career, not only because it usually comes with funding and some, respect and recognition, but because it takes some personal investment to fill out these applications. It's just like the scholarships when you're in high school. Like, so many scholarships don't get claimed because nobody bothers to fill them out, right? This is one of those spaces where you by default will be with a bunch of other dedicated, interested individuals, and having those pre-made cohorts helps you skip through a lot of these preliminary steps in terms of building real peer-to-peer mentorship. So, the last thing really is that no one person is enough. You need mentors across all of the different realms and aspects that you as a holistic person are managing in your life. And so you really do want to think about, who is my dream team and what part of my life would really benefit from having somebody in this space. So an example of some fellowships and outside mentorships, the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship for Professional Students, I think it's really great. Here in Los Angeles, we have Women's Center for Creative Work. I myself run a research collective called Theory Generator Playground. There's lots of videos there on the YouTube channel about things like CVs versus resumes, and just lots of the content that you kind of see here on these level 1 and 2 trainings. But there's also lots of Facebook groups. So you can join Show Me Your Stethoscope for nurses, or Latinas Getting Doctoral Degrees, or Black Men in White Coats for physicians. Do a keyword search and find a group that matches you, and you'll be amazed at the level of relationship building that happens in these spaces. And I've got some references here, which you probably are fine with, so you don't need to see those. I am going to stop presenting. But I just wanted to make sure that people were able to kind of get the sense that mentorship is for any of us at every level, right? We're going to be called upon to be a mentor. We're going to be a mentee when we recognize that there's room for growth. And if you're doing this right, there should always be room for growth, right? And so if you keep that in mind, that being open to growth and change and new perspectives and honestly new interventions for things, then you really open yourself up to opportunities that are ultimately going to benefit you, not just in your career, but as a person who is doing one of the hardest jobs there is, right? Healthcare and research, we're doing this stuff for the species. We're doing it not only for the humans that we interact with directly, but we're doing it for this larger body of knowledge that is, local, national, international, and is really meaningful, but it can also break your heart. So having these relationships that aren't just friendships, they really are grounded in our sense of purpose here in this field, can really help you get through some of these rougher spots and help you grow into somebody who's just more resilient and more happy. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to stop recording. And don't forget, we have these meetings every week. If you have an idea or something that you would like to hear about, let us know. If anybody wants to present, that's also welcome. And I can also get some guest speakers depending on your interests and really what we need as a group. So thanks for showing up and listening to this recording, and contact me as needed.